So it's not every day that you get to meet someone who is 100 years old. In fact, I was doing some research and found that less than 0.27% of the entire population here in the United States is over 100. So obviously when I had the chance to meet somebody who was over 100, I had to jump at it. What wisdom did I glean from somebody who is over 100 years old? Sit back, watch this video to find out. So this is Joseph Disano. He was born December 17th, 1922 in Malden, Massachusetts. When Mr. Disano graduated from high school, he enlisted in the Marines and found himself placed in the Air Division. When World War II broke out, he found himself stationed in the South Pacific, first in Australia and then later spending his tour of duty mainly in the Philippines. In 1948, 3 years after the war ended, Mr. Disano settled down in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. Before moving permanently to California, Mr. Disano made a brief pit stop back in his stomping grounds of Malden, Massachusetts. It was there that he met his late wife Addie, who he was married to until 2017, the year of her passing. They would be married for 7 decades. And how did you know that you wanted to marry your wife?
Because she was Italian, and we really hit it off. Matter of fact, as far as dancing and a big band, we saw 6 big bands one week in 7 nights. That's what we liked.
And sports.
And sports, okay.
Oh, sports, yeah. Because she was a good athlete, better than I ever was.
Which brings me to the first important lesson that I learned from Mr. Disano. Problems are inevitable in marriage and relationships. It's unreasonable to expect anything less. What's most important is how you deal with those problems throughout a relationship.
You're going to have problems with everything. You know, what school your children are going to go, who they pay attention to, who's a boyfriend, all that stuff. But we solved them without any trouble.
You know, speaking of problems, I think about the times that we live in, and it's clear that it's a lot easier to be more pessimistic than optimistic these days. And I get it, you know, you pull out one of these, you open up social media and you start scrolling through your feeds and you can't help but feel a heavy sense of despair, almost like the world is collapsing right in front of your eyes. That brings me to the next important lesson that I learned from Mr. Disano, which is we may not necessarily be able to control what happens to us, but we do have the control over how we respond. What was the biggest lesson that you learned from living through the Depression?
Oh, that you're going to do better than your parents did. You're going to go to school. You had all these ambitions. Yeah. Yeah, you had those back here all the time.
Now, even though Mr. Disano was optimistic about his future, that didn't necessarily mean that he knew how it would play out. When it came to his career, after the war ended, Mr. Disano would try on a couple different options to emphasize.
I worked in a rubber shoe company, Converse rubber shoe. Oh, I started to go to night school and learn how to be an electrician. I went to oil company. And they said, what do you know how to do? I said, no, nothing. So why don't you go to school? So I said, where would I go? What would I learn? Well, you could become a petroleum engineer. I said, what's the best school? He said, Stanford. That's what I did. But then I never became an petroleum engineer.
Now, eventually, Mr. Disano would settle on a career path totally unrelated to the things that he studied in school. He and his wife Addie opened Kip's Bar and Grill in Berkeley in 1954. And Kip's would go on to become an institution for students and faculty at the University of California at Berkeley. They ran Kip's until 1980, but they weren't out of the game for too long. In fact, 4 years later, Mr. Disano and his wife opened up another restaurant, this time in Orinda, called Village Pizza in 1984. All of this brings me to the next important lesson that I learned from speaking with Mr. Disano.
Do what you're good at and do what you like. You have to like what you're doing. If you don't like what you're doing, you're going to hate going to the office every day, right? So you have to pick something that you're going to enjoy doing the rest of your life. Not feel that I have to go to work tomorrow morning, God. But you have to feel like I'm going to work tomorrow because I might accomplish something.
In the restaurant business, Mr. Disano found something that he was good at and enjoyed. He wouldn't have lasted for decades if the opposite was true. At 100 years old, Mr. Disano knows that he's closer to the end of life than he is at the beginning. But this doesn't worry him at all. In fact, it never has. Do you fear death?
No, never did.
Why is that?
I don't know. Whatever will be, will be. No, I really didn't think of it, and I wasn't afraid. I was never afraid of death.
And that brings me to the final lesson that I'd like to share with you that I learned from Mr. Disano, and that is, don't worry so much about tomorrow if it takes you away from being in the moment today.
You gotta just live one day at a time, forget about it. Some people would almost die thinking about dying. No way.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what did you think? What did you learn from this video? I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment down below regarding anything that was interesting, or even if you disagree. Just want to have a thoughtful conversation about this in the comments down below. Until next time, I'm John Santiago, and you have been watching World of Nuance. Thanks. Take care.